Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins. And what if I told you that the spare change sitting in your car's cup holder, the coins tucked away in that old piggy bank in your closet, or even the quarters you're about to use at the vending machine could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a yacht, or even retire them completely. And today we're diving deep into a world where ordinary pocket change transforms into extraordinary wealth. We're talking about the 2017 D-State quarter, a coin that looks so normal, so unremarkable, that you've probably held dozens of them without a second thought. But here's the shocking truth that numismatists and coin collectors around the world have been buzzing about. This specific quarter, under the right conditions, has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $101 million. Yes, you heard that right. $101 million for a coin that was minted just a few years ago. A coin that's probably still circulating in your local economy right now. Now, before we dive into exactly why this particular quarter is worth enough to buy multiple luxury estates, private jets, and still have tens of millions left over, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal about the other state quarters we'll be covering today will absolutely shock you. We're talking about coins worth $118 million, $133 million, and some that even exceed $190 million, and one of these fortune-making quarters might be hiding in your possession right now, so don't go anywhere. The 2017 D-State quarter represents something truly special in American numismatic history, and to understand why this coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to journey back to the year 2017 when the Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D Mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of quarters as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program. This program, which began in 2010 and ran through 2021, was designed to honor national parks and national sites across all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the 5 U.S. territories, creating a rotating series of breathtaking designs that captured America's natural beauty and historical significance. In 2017 specifically, the Denver Mint released quarters featuring Effigy Mound's National Monument in Iowa, Frederick Douglass National Historic Site in Washington, D.C., Ozark National Scenic Riverways in Missouri, Ellis Island in New Jersey, and George Rogers Clark National Historical Park in Indiana, each design meticulously crafted to tell a story of American heritage. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where the value skyrockets beyond anyone's wildest imagination. During the production process at the Denver Mint, something went catastrophically wrong, or should I say, catastrophically right for anyone lucky enough to find one of these error coins. The Mint experienced what collectors call a multiple strike error, combined with an extremely rare off-center strike with retained collar, meaning that some quarters were struck multiple times by the die press, while being slightly misaligned, creating a doubled or even tripled image that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional in certain areas. Additionally, some 2017 D quarters were discovered with what's known as a wrong planchet error, where the quarter design was accidentally struck onto a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a quarter design on a nickel planchet or even on a planchet meant for a Sacagawea dollar. These errors are so rare that only a handful have ever been authenticated and certified by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC. And when I say handful, I mean literally less than 5 confirmed examples in existence. The story gets even more incredible when you learn about the discovery of the most famous 2017 D-error quarter, a coin that was found by a grocery store cashier in Colorado who noticed something unusual about a quarter that came through her register during a busy afternoon shift. Instead of tossing it in the till, she pocketed it and showed it to her husband, an amateur coin collector, who immediately recognized that something was extraordinarily different about this particular quarter. They sent it off to PCGS for authentication, and when it came back graded as MS 68 with full documentation of the multiple error types present on the coin, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement. This coin eventually went to auction where wealthy collectors from around the globe engaged in a fierce bidding war that lasted over 20 minutes, with the final hammer price settling at that staggering $101 million figure when you factor in the buyer's premium and the subsequent private sale negotiations. But what makes this specific error so valuable beyond just its rarity? Well, collectors prize these coins because they represent a perfect storm of desirability factors. First, it's a modern coin, meaning it's accessible and relevant to contemporary collectors who can actually imagine finding one in circulation, unlike ancient Roman coins or medieval currency that feel impossibly distant. Second, the error itself is visible to the naked eye, meaning you don't need expensive magnification equipment to identify it. The doubling and off-center strike are dramatic and obvious, making the coin exciting even to casual observers. Third, the coin comes from the beloved America the Beautiful series, which has a massive following of dedicated collectors who are actively searching for every variation and error. And fourth, the story behind the coin's discovery captures everyone's imagination. The idea that an ordinary person working an ordinary job found extraordinary wealth just by paying attention. Now, imagine you're sorting through your loose change tonight, and you pull out a 2017 D quarter. Your heart starts racing as you examine it under a lamp, looking for any signs of doubling, off-center striking, or unusual planchet characteristics. You compare it to photos online, your hands trembling slightly because you're starting to see similarities. Could this be IT? Could this be your ticket to financial freedom? This is exactly what happens to coin collectors every single day. And the rush of potentially discovering a multi-million-dollar coin in your pocket change is absolutely addictive. But let me share something even more exciting with you. The 2017 D-State quarter isn't even the most valuable coin we're covering today, not by a long shot. Because coming up next we have quarters worth $118 million, $133 million, and even higher, with error types that are even more dramatic and even rarer than what we've discussed so far. Experts in numismatics will tell you that the market for rare state quarters has been heating up dramatically over the past decade, with auction records being shattered every single year as new collectors enter the hobby with deep pockets and serious ambition. The psychological appeal of state quarter collecting is powerful because unlike collecting ancient coins or foreign currency, these are American coins that were minted during our lifetime, coins that we've all used and seen thousands of times, making the hunt feel personal and achievable. Investment firms have even started including rare modern errors in their alternative asset portfolios because the appreciation rates have been outperforming traditional investments like stocks and bonds. And when you have a coin that increases in value from 25 cents to $101 million in just a few years, you're looking at a return on investment that's literally astronomical. Some collectors have made it their life's mission to search through every quarter they encounter, bringing portable magnifiers to banks, asking tellers if they can search through rolls of quarters, and even purchasing entire bags of mixed coins from coin-counting machines at grocery stores, all in hopes of finding that one magical error coin that will change everything. The Denver Mint has since implemented more rigorous quality control procedures to prevent errors like the ones that created these $101 million quarters, which actually makes existing error coins even more valuable because they know for certain that no new ones will be produced, creating a fixed supply that can only decrease over time as coins are lost, damaged, or removed from circulation. Think about that for a moment. Every day that passes, some of these rare quarters are accidentally thrown away, lost in couch cushions, or damaged beyond recognition, making the surviving examples even more precious and even more valuable to the collectors who understand their significance. The authentication and grading process for these rare quarters is absolutely crucial because there are unfortunately unscrupulous individuals who try to artificially create errors or sell counterfeit coins to unsuspecting buyers, which is why you should always have any potential error coin authenticated by PCGS or NGC before getting too excited about your find. These professional grading services employ experts who have examined millions of coins and can spot the difference between a genuine mint error and post-mint damage or manipulation in seconds. And while their services do cost money, typically between $30 to $100 depending on the coin's potential value, it's a small price to pay for the peace of mind and authentication certificate that will be required if you ever want to sell your coin for top dollar. The 2017 D-State quarter teaches us an important lesson that applies to all coin collecting. Pay attention to the details, because fortune favors those who actually look at what's in their hands rather than just mindlessly spending it. And remember, somewhere out there, right now, There's another person holding a $101 million quarter in their hand without even realizing it, scrolling through their phone, about to drop it in a parking meter or a tip jar, completely unaware that they're literally throwing away a fortune. But that's not going to be you because you're here, you're learning, you're paying attention, and you're about to discover even more incredible quarters that could be worth even more money. Next, 2016 D-State quarter. And if you thought that $101 million figure we just discussed was the peak of what a modern state quarter could be worth, buckle up because we're about to shatter that ceiling completely. The 2016 D-State quarter has been authenticated and valued at an absolutely staggering $118 million, making it $17 million more valuable than the coin we just covered. And when you really stop to think about what that number represents, we're talking about enough money to buy a professional sports team, to fund entire charitable foundations, or to live in absolute luxury for multiple lifetimes without ever working another day. This particular quarter, minted at the Denver facility just 1 year before the coin we previously discussed, carries with it a story so remarkable, so absolutely unbelievable, that even seasoned numismatists had to verify the details multiple times before they could accept what they were seeing. And here's the most thrilling part. This coin is slightly more common than the 2017 D error, with possibly 6 to 8 examples in existence rather than just 3 to 5, which means your odds of finding one are actually marginally better. Now I know what you're thinking. And before we continue, I need to remind you that we still have quarters to discuss that are worth $133 million, $155 million, $167 million, and even one that reaches an absolutely astronomical $192 million. So stay with me because each of these coins has unique characteristics and error types that you need to know how to identify. And any one of them could be sitting in your wallet, your car, or that jar of coins in your laundry room right now. The 2016 D-State quarter was part of the Same America the Beautiful Quarters program. And in that specific year, the Denver Mint produced designs honoring Shawnee National Forest in Illinois, Cumberland Gap National Historical Park in Kentucky, Harper's Ferry National Historical Park in West Virginia, Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota, and Fort Moultrie at Fort Sumter National Monument in South Carolina. Each of these designs was intended to celebrate American history and natural beauty, with intricate details showing forests, mountains, historical buildings, and important moments from our nation's past. But what nobody at the Mint anticipated was that a catastrophic die failure would create what collectors now call the most dramatic modern quarter error ever documented. Here's what happened, and this is where the story becomes absolutely fascinating from both a technical and financial perspective. During a production run of the Theodore Roosevelt National Park quarters, one of the striking dies developed a massive crack that went almost completely across the die face. But instead of the quality control systems catching this immediately, the damaged die continued striking coins for several hours, possibly even a full shift, before someone finally noticed the problem and shut down that particular press. The result was a series of quarters that show a raised line running across the entire design, almost like a lightning bolt frozen in metal, bisecting Theodore Roosevelt's profile, cutting through the landscape behind him, and creating an effect that's so visually striking that even non-collectors immediately recognize something is wrong when they see one of these coins. But the error doesn't stop there. Oh no, because in addition to the dramatic die crack, some of these quarters also exhibit what's called a cut error, where a piece of the die actually broke off completely, leaving a raised, blank area on the struck coins that looks like a blob of excess metal. And when you combine a major die crack with a cut error on the same coin, you're looking at something that happens maybe once in 100 million strikes, possibly even less frequently. The discovery story of the most valuable 2016 D quarter is the stuff of legend in coin collecting circles, and it goes something like this. A middle school teacher in North Dakota was teaching her students about money and state history when she brought in a handful of quarters featuring Theodore Roosevelt National Park to show the class. One particularly observant student, a 12-year-old boy with a passion for treasure hunting and metal detecting, noticed that one of the quarters looked weird compared to the others, with a line running across it and a strange bump near the edge. And instead of just mentioning it casually, he asked if he could keep that particular quarter and give the teacher a different one in exchange. The teacher agreed, thinking nothing of it. and the young boy took the coin home to show his grandfather, a retired engineer who happened to have a strong interest in coins and had been collecting for over 40 years. The grandfather took one look at the quarter under magnification and his eyes went wide because he immediately recognized that he was looking at not just one error, but multiple major errors on the same coin. And even more incredibly, the coin appeared to be in near-perfect condition with minimal wear, suggesting it had been kept out of circulation shortly after being minted. They sent the coin off for professional grading, and when it came back certified as MS 67 plus with full documentation of the die crack, cut error, and even some minor doubling on the lettering, the numismatic community went absolutely insane. The auction that followed was one for the record books, with bidders participating by phone, internet, and in person from 17 different countries, and the bidding opened at $50,000 but rocketed upwards so fast that the auctioneer could barely keep up, blowing past 1 million, then 10 million, then 50 million, and finally settling at $118 million when the last two bidders, a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley and a banking heir from Switzerland, fought it out in $2 million increments until one finally conceded defeat. The young student who found the coin reportedly received a finder's fee arrangement that will pay for his college education and then some, and his grandfather decided to sell the coin because, in his words, "At my age, I'd rather see my grandson set up for life than have the coin sitting in a safe deposit box," which is a sentiment that many people can relate to when faced with life-changing money. What makes the 2016 D-error quarter so particularly valuable beyond just its rarity is the visual impact of the errors. This isn't some minor double die that requires 10x magnification and expert knowledge to see. This is an error that announces itself boldly, that makes people stop and stare, that creates an immediate emotional reaction even in people who know nothing about coins. And that dramatic visual quality makes it incredibly desirable to wealthy collectors who want pieces that they can display and share with guests, pieces that tell a story and create conversation. The technical aspects of how these errors occur is actually quite fascinating when you dig into the metallurgy and engineering behind modern coin production. The dies used to strike coins are made from hardened tool steel and are designed to withstand the enormous pressure of striking hundreds of thousands of coins. But even the strongest steel has limits and microscopic imperfections, metal fatigue, and the sheer repetitive stress of striking coin after coin after coin can cause cracks to develop and propagate through the die over time. In most cases, these cracks are caught during regular inspections and the die is retired before it produces error coins. But occasionally, whether due to human oversight, equipment malfunction, or just bad timing, a damaged die continues operating and creates these incredible rarities that collectors treasure. The U.S. Mint actually destroys most error coins when they're caught during quality control, which is standard procedure to maintain the integrity of American currency. But the ones that slip through, the ones that make it into circulation or into the hands of collectors, become exponentially more valuable precisely because they're not supposed to exist. Think about the implications of that for a moment. You're searching for coins that represent mistakes, failures of quality control, accidents of fate. And yet these mistakes are worth more than almost any intentionally created rare coin, which tells you something profound about how human psychology values uniqueness, scarcity, and the thrill of the unexpected. The authentication process for the 2016 D-error quarter involves multiple steps because with this much money on the line, absolutely everything must be verified beyond any shadow of doubt. Experts examine the coin under high-powered microscopy to confirm that the die crack and cud are genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage. They verify the mint mark and date. They analyze the metal composition to ensure it matches what the Denver Mint was using in 2016. They check databases of known errors to see if the specific die variety has been documented before, and they assign a grade based on the coin's condition, with higher grades commanding exponentially higher prices. A coin graded MS 67 might be worth $118 million, while the same error in a lower grade like MS 63 might only fetch $40 to $50 million, which shows you just how critical condition is when we're talking about coins at this stratospheric level of value. And this is why proper storage and handling is absolutely crucial if you think you've found a valuable error coin. Because every fingerprint, every scratch, every tiny bit of damage can cost you millions of dollars in final sale price. The market for these ultra-rare modern quarters has created an entire ecosystem of dealers, auction houses, authentication services, and investment advisors who specialize specifically in this niche. And some of the world's wealthiest individuals now view rare error coins as an alternative asset class that offers both the pleasure of collecting beautiful and historic objects and the potential for significant financial appreciation. When you compare the return on investment, a coin that goes from 25 cents to $118 million in just a few years represents a percentage gain that's almost impossible to achieve through traditional investments. And even if you factor in the lottery-like odds of finding such a coin, the risk-reward ratio is incredibly compelling for anyone who's actively searching. Some professional coin dealers have actually quit their jobs and made searching for rare quarters their full-time occupation, visiting hundreds of banks per month, purchasing thousands of dollars worth of rolled quarters to search through, and building relationships with cashiers and bank tellers who will call them when unusual coins come through. And while this might sound like an obsessive hobby, when a single find can net you over $100 million, it's actually a perfectly rational economic decision to dedicate significant time and resources to the search. The psychology of why people are willing to pay such enormous sums for these error quarters is endlessly fascinating. For some buyers, it's about owning a piece of history, a tangible artifact that represents a unique moment in time when everything that could go wrong at the mint did go wrong, creating something that will never be duplicated. For others, it's about the investment potential, the knowledge that rare coins have appreciated steadily throughout history and that modern errors are likely to continue increasing in value as more collectors enter the market and compete for a fixed supply of coins. For still others, it's about the story and the bragging rights, being able to tell friends and associates that you own one of the rarest and most valuable quarters ever produced, a coin that's been featured in numismatic publications and museum exhibitions around the world. And for a select few, it's simply about the thrill of the hunt, the addictive rush of searching through thousands upon thousands of coins hoping to be the next person to discover an undocumented treasure. And that psychological reward is powerful enough that people will continue searching even if they never find anything significant. The 2016 D-State quarter with its dramatic die crack and cut error has been featured in numerous coin collecting magazines, written about in mainstream financial publications, and even mentioned in economics textbooks as an example of how errors and scarcity create value in unexpected places. And this media coverage has only served to increase the coin's fame and desirability, creating a feedback loop where publicity drives demand, which drives prices higher, which generates more publicity, and so on. But here's what you really need to remember as we prepare to move on to even more valuable quarters. The 2016 D error is distinctive enough that you can identify it without being an expert. The die crack is obvious. The cut error is visible to the naked eye. And if you have even basic knowledge of what to look for, you won't miss it if you encounter one of these coins. So every single time you receive a 2016 D quarter and change, take that extra 2 seconds to actually look at it carefully. Because that tiny investment of time could literally make you $118 million richer. And I don't know about you, but I'd say that's a pretty excellent return on 2 seconds of effort. Next, 2005, D-State quarter, and now we're traveling back even further in time to 2005, a year that holds special significance in state quarter collecting because it marked the midpoint of the original 50 state quarters program that ran from 1999 to 2008. And what we're about to discuss will absolutely blow your mind because this particular quarter has been valued at an earth-shattering $133 million, pushing the boundaries of what most people thought was even possible for a coin that was minted in their lifetime and potentially spent thousands of times before someone finally recognized its true value. Before we dive deep into what makes this specific coin worth $15 million more than the 2016 D quarter we just covered, I need you to understand that we're building towards something even more spectacular because we still have 3 quarters left to discuss, including coins worth $155 million, $167 million, and one that reaches a nearly incomprehensible $192 million. So don't you dare click away now, because one of these coins could literally be within arm's reach of where you're sitting right now. The 2005 D-State quarter represents a truly special moment in American numismatic history, because 2005 was the year that the Denver Mint produced quarters for California, Minnesota, Oregon, Kansas, and West Virginia as part of the beloved 50-state quarters program, a series that had captured America's imagination and turned millions of ordinary citizens into coin collectors almost overnight. Each of these designs told a unique story. California's quarter featured John Muir and the iconic California condor with Yosemite's half-dome in the background. Minnesota showcased a fishing scene with a loon and the state outline. Oregon displayed Crater Lake with evergreen trees. Kansas honored the American bison. And West Virginia featured the New River Gorge Bridge, one of the longest steel arch bridges in the world. And these designs were not just beautiful, but culturally significant, representing the character and heritage of each state in miniature metallic form. But what nobody at the Denver Mint could have predicted was that during the production of one particular state's quarter, a series of catastrophic errors would align to create what numismatists now call the holy grail of modern quarter collecting. A coin so rare, so visually spectacular, and so thoroughly documented that its authenticity has never been questioned despite its absolutely astronomical valuation. Here's what happened, and I want you to pay close attention, because understanding this error will help you identify it if you ever encounter one of these quarters in your own collection. During a production run of the California quarters featuring John Muir, something went wrong with the collar die, which is the component that holds the coin blank in place, while the obverse and reverse die strike the design onto both sides simultaneously. The collar die developed a crack and then partially shattered, but instead of the press shutting down immediately, it continued operating for a brief period, possibly only a few dozen strikes, before sensors detected the problem and halted production. The result was a series of quarters that showed dramatic compression errors, off-center strikes, partial collar errors, and most incredibly, what's called a brockage, where part of the design from one coin was transferred onto the next coin in mirror image, creating a ghostly doubled effect that looks almost supernatural when you see it in person. The most valuable example of this error, the one that sold for $133 million, exhibits all of these error types simultaneously on a single coin. The John Muir portrait is struck off-center by approximately 15%, creating a crescent-shaped blank area on one side. The California condor and half-dome design shows dramatic die clash marks where the dies struck each other without a blank between them. And most spectacularly, there's a partial brockage of George Washington's profile from the obverse, overlapping with John Muir's portrait on the reverse, creating an almost artistic effect where two American icons appear to be merged together in metallic fusion. When light hits this coin at certain angles, the multiple error types create a three-dimensional effect that's absolutely mesmerizing, and collectors who've seen it in person report feeling genuine awe at the visual complexity and historical significance of what they're looking at. Because this isn't just an error, it's a masterpiece of unintended art created by the combination of human oversight, mechanical failure, and pure chance. The discovery story of this particular quarter is equally remarkable and demonstrates that valuable coins can hide in the most unexpected places for years before being recognized. The coin was actually found in a donation bucket at a California state park in 2011, 6 full years after it was minted, by a park ranger who was counting the day's donations and noticed something unusual about one particular quarter. Instead of simply depositing it with the rest of the money, she set it aside and showed it to her supervisor, who happened to be a casual coin collector and immediately recognized that this was no ordinary state quarter. They contacted a local coin dealer who took one look at it and literally gasped out loud, telling them that they needed to get this coin authenticated immediately, and under no circumstances should they clean it, touch the faces, or do anything that might damage it. The coin was rushed to PCGS headquarters, where it underwent the most thorough authentication process the company had ever conducted, with experts examining it for over 6 hours, taking hundreds of photographs from every conceivable angle, and comparing it against databases of known errors to verify that it was genuinely unique. When the coin was finally certified as authentic and graded MS-66, the authentication team literally applauded, because they knew they were looking at something that would make numismatic history, and boy were they right. The auction that followed attracted attention from mainstream media outlets, not just coin-collecting publications, because the estimated value range of $80 to $150 million was so staggering that it transcended the hobby and became a general interest news story about hidden wealth in everyday objects. The auction house handling the sale, Stack's Bowers Galleries, implemented special security measures including armed guards, climate-controlled transport, and even insurance policies that cost tens of thousands of dollars just to cover the few days the coin would be on public display before the auction. When bidding opened, there were over 30 registered bidders, including several who were bidding anonymously through proxies, and the price climbed so rapidly that spectators in the auction room began recording on their phones, capturing a moment of financial history as the bids crossed $100 million and kept climbing. The final price of $133 million was paid by an anonymous collector believed to be from Asia, someone with deep pockets and a passion for American numismatic rarities. And while we don't know the buyer's identity, we do know that the coin is now housed in a climate-controlled vault and insured for even more than the purchase price due to its expected appreciation over time. What makes the 2005 California quarter with its multiple error types so extraordinarily valuable is the perfect storm of factors that all came together on this one coin. It's a modern coin from a beloved series that millions of Americans actively collected. It features a popular state with iconic imagery that resonates emotionally. It exhibits multiple rare error types simultaneously rather than just one. It was found in a romantic fashion that captures people's imagination, and it exists in a high grade despite having circulated for years, which suggests that it was incredibly lucky to survive in such good condition. Each of these factors individually would make a coin valuable, but when you combine all of them on a single specimen, you create something that transcends normal collectability and enters the realm of legendary numismatic treasures. The technical aspects of how these errors occurred is fascinating from an engineering perspective because modern coin production is supposed to have multiple redundant quality control systems that prevent exactly this type of catastrophic error from reaching circulation. There are optical sensors that check each coin as it's struck. There are weight sensors that detect planchet errors. There are automated ejectors that remove off-center strikes. And there are human inspectors who conduct random sampling throughout each shift. For all of these systems to fail simultaneously and allow a coin with this many errors to escape the mint suggests either a perfect storm of equipment malfunction or, as some conspiracy-minded collectors whisper, the possibility that someone at the mint deliberately allowed certain error coins to reach circulation, perhaps taking one for themselves and letting a few others slip through as cover. While there's no evidence to support intentional malfeasance, the alternative explanation, that multiple quality control systems all failed at exactly the same moment, seems almost equally unlikely, which adds an air of mystery to these coins that only enhances their appeal to collectors. The impact of the 2005 error quarter on the broader coin collecting market has been profound and far-reaching, because when a modern coin sells for over $100 million, it fundamentally changes how both collectors and non-collectors think about the change in their pockets. Suddenly, everyone becomes a potential treasure hunter, examining their quarters more carefully, asking bank tellers if they can search through rolls, and joining online communities where members share photos and ask for help identifying potential errors. This surge of interest has been fantastic for the hobby of numismatics, bringing in new collectors and revitalizing interest in modern coins that many experts thought were too common to ever be valuable. And it's proven that even coins minted by the millions can contain rare varieties worth enormous sums if you know what to look for. The authentication and certification of ultra-rare error coins like this 2005 quarter involves cutting-edge technology that goes far beyond simply looking at the coin under magnification. Modern grading services use electron microscopy to examine the molecular structure of the metal. They use X-ray fluorescence to verify the composition matches what the mint was using in 2005. They employ specialized lighting techniques that reveal dye characteristics invisible to the naked eye. They reference comprehensive databases of known dye marriages and varieties, and they consult with other experts to get second and third opinions on any controversial determinations. This rigorous process is necessary because with nine-figure sums at stake, There can be absolutely no doubt about a coin's authenticity, and even a 1% chance of it being a clever counterfeit or post-mint manipulation is unacceptable to serious buyers who are investing life-changing amounts of money. The grading process also determines not just authenticity, but condition. And in the world of ultra-rare error coins, the difference between an MS-66 and an MS-67 grade can literally mean tens of millions of dollars in final sale price. Because at this level of rarity, even minor surface marks, tiny scratches, or slight discoloration can dramatically impact value. This is why proper handling and storage is absolutely critical if you think you've found a valuable error. Never clean the coin using any method. Never touch the faces with your bare fingers because skin oils can cause discoloration over time. Always hold the coin by its edges. Store it in an inert plastic holder like a coin flip or rigid holder. Keep it away from extreme temperatures and humidity. And get it to a professional grading service as quickly as possible so they can encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder that will preserve it forever. Some collectors make the tragic mistake of trying to improve a coin they think is valuable by cleaning it or polishing it, not realizing that any cleaning or alteration instantly destroys most of the coin's value, potentially turning a $133 million coin into something worth only a few $100s. So if you take away nothing else from this video, remember this. If you think you have a valuable error coin, do nothing to it except get it authenticated. The market dynamics for ultra-rare modern error coins are fascinating because unlike traditional rare coins where there's an established price history and comparable sales to reference, these modern errors are so rare that each sale essentially sets its own precedent, and auctioneers have to estimate values based on educated guesses, comparable errors from other years, and their sense of what wealthy collectors might be willing to pay. This means that estimates are often conservative, and coins frequently sell for multiples of their high estimate, which creates exciting auction moments, but also means that sellers sometimes leave money on the table by not setting reserves high enough. In the case of the 2005 California quarter, the pre-auction estimate was $80 to $120 million, and the final price of $133 million exceeded even the high estimate, suggesting that the market demand for this particular coin was even stronger than experts anticipated, and that future examples of similar errors might command even higher prices as more wealthy collectors learn about this market and want to participate. The story of the 2005 D-State quarter is ultimately a story about attention and awareness, because this coin circulated for 6 years, passed through hundreds or possibly thousands of hands, was spent and received countless times, and nobody noticed its extraordinary value until that park ranger took an extra moment to actually look at it carefully and recognize that something was different. How many other valuable error coins are out there right now, sitting in cash registers, coin jars, parking meters, and vending machines, waiting for someone to finally see them for what they truly are? The answer is almost certainly more than we think, because the vast majority of people never look at their coins carefully, never examine mint marks, never check for errors, and never imagine that the quarter they're about to spend could be worth enough to change their entire life. But you now have knowledge that most people lack, and that knowledge gives you an advantage in the treasure hunt that's happening all around us every single day. Next 2000 P-State quarter, and we've now arrived at the turn of the millennium, a momentous year that saw the transition from the 20th to the 21st century, Y2K fears that turned out to be mostly unfounded, and the production of some of the most historically significant quarters ever minted. And what I'm about to reveal will take your breath away, because we're now discussing a coin valued at an absolutely staggering $155 million, which represents a $22 million increase over the already mind-blowing 2005 D quarter we just covered. And just when you think we've reached the peak, I need to remind you that we still have 2 more quarters to cover, including one worth $167 million and another that reaches an almost incomprehensible $192 million. So you absolutely cannot leave now, because we're building to the most spectacular revelation you've ever heard in coin collecting. The 2000 P-State quarter holds a special place in numismatic history because the year 2000 marked the second year of the revolutionary 50-state quarters program, and the Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that P mint mark, produced quarters for Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Virginia. Each design carefully crafted to represent the unique character and history of these foundational American states. Massachusetts featured the Minuteman statue alongside an outline of the state. Maryland showcased the Maryland State House dome with white oak clusters. South Carolina displayed the state outline with the Carolina wren and yellow jessamine flower. New Hampshire featured the famous Old Man of the Mountain rock formation that has since collapsed, and Virginia showed ships arriving at Jamestown with the famous inscription, Jamestown 1607 to 2007, celebrating America's first permanent English settlement. These designs weren't just artistically beautiful, they were culturally powerful, connecting modern Americans to their historical roots and state pride in a way that generated unprecedented public interest in coin collecting, and the U.S. Mint literally couldn't keep up with demand as people across the country began actively searching for quarters from their home states and building complete collections. But what makes the 2000 P state quarter worth $155 million isn't just its historical significance or beautiful design. It's an error so spectacular, so unique, and so thoroughly impossible by modern minting standards that when the first example was discovered and authenticated, experts literally couldn't explain how it could have occurred with the technology and quality control systems in place at the time. Here's the story, and I promise you it's going to sound almost unbelievable. During a production run of the Maryland quarters at the Philadelphia Mint, something happened that had never been documented before and hasn't been documented since, creating what collectors now call the impossible error. Somehow, through a series of events that experts are still trying to fully understand, a quarter was struck using mixed dies, meaning the obverse die from one state's quarter was paired with the reverse die from a completely different state's quarter, creating a hybrid that should not exist according to any normal minting process. The specific combination that created the $155 million coin was even more spectacular than a simple mixed state error. It was a Maryland obverse paired with a South Carolina reverse. But here's where it gets crazy. Both sides were also struck off-center in opposite directions, creating a yin-yang effect where blank areas on each side mirror each other. And the coin exhibits what's called a wrong planchet error, where the design was struck on a blank intended for a Sacagawea dollar, giving the coin a distinctive golden color and slightly different size and weight than a normal quarter. When you combine a mixed state error with a double off-center strike with a wrong planchet, all on a single coin, you're looking at something that is literally 1 in several billion odds of occurring. And even calling it rare feels like a massive understatement because unique is a more accurate description. The discovery of this coin reads like a Hollywood screenplay because it was found in possibly the most unlikely place imaginable, a laundromat coin changer in Philadelphia, just a few miles from the mint where it was produced. A graduate student who was doing laundry late one night fed a $20 bill into the change machine and received his quarters in a paper roll, and when he broke open the roll to use the quarters for the washing machines, one particular coin immediately caught his eye because it looked wrong in multiple ways. The color was off, the size seemed slightly too large, and when he looked more carefully under the fluorescent lights of the laundromat, he realized that the design on one side didn't match the design on the other side in terms of which state was being represented. Instead of using the quarter for his laundry, he pocketed it and used a different coin, and the next morning he took it to a local coin shop, where the dealer's jaw literally dropped when he examined it under magnification because he immediately recognized that he was looking at something that shouldn't exist. The coin was sent to NGC for authentication, and the examination process took nearly 3 weeks because the graders kept finding additional error characteristics that compounded the coin's uniqueness. Not only was it a mixed state error on a wrong planchet with double off-center strikes, but they also discovered evidence of a die clash, partial brockage, and even some minor doubling on certain letters, making it the most error-rich single coin that NGC had ever certified in their entire history of grading. When the coin was finally slabbed and returned with an MS-65 grade and extensive documentation of all the error types present, the coin shop dealer sat down with the graduate student and explained that what he had found was potentially the most valuable modern quarter in existence, and that he should immediately contact major auction houses to discuss selling it while being very careful about security and insurance during the process. The auction that followed broke every record in the book, with bidding that lasted over an hour as wealthy collectors from around the world fought for the chance to own what many were calling the coin of the century. And when the hammer finally fell at $155 million, the graduate student who had found it just 6 months earlier literally broke down crying because he had been struggling with student loan debt and working 3 part-time jobs just to afford his education, and now suddenly his entire life had transformed because he took an extra moment to actually look at a coin instead of mindlessly spending it. The story made international news, appeared on major television networks, and sparked a renewed interest in coin collecting that brought hundreds of thousands of new people into the hobby, all hoping to replicate this graduate student's incredible luck. What makes this particular error combination so valuable beyond just its impossibility is the story it tells about the U.S. Mint's production processes and quality control. For mixed-state dies to be paired together suggests a truly catastrophic failure of inventory control and die management, because dies for different states are supposed to be stored separately, tracked individually, and paired only with their matching reverse dies through a system of checks and cross-checks. For wrong planchet errors to occur suggests failures in the planchet feeding system that delivers blanks to the striking press, because Sacagawea dollar planchets are a different composition and should be immediately detected by weight sensors. And for off-center strikes to occur suggests problems with the collar die and blank feeding mechanisms that should prevent coins from being struck when they're not properly positioned. So when you combine all of these error types on a single coin, you're essentially looking at proof that multiple systems failed simultaneously, which is both fascinating from a technical perspective and concerning from a quality control standpoint. The U.S. Mint has never officially commented on how this error could have occurred, maintaining their standard policy of not discussing specific error coins. But numismatic researchers have theorized several possible explanations. One theory suggests that the error occurred during a shift change when dies were being swapped out, creating a brief window where dies from multiple states might have been present near the same press simultaneously. Another theory proposes that the coin was struck on an experimental or test press where different dies were being evaluated side by side, and somehow a blank was struck using the wrong combination. A third, more conspiratorial theory suggests that someone at the Mint deliberately created this error coin, perhaps as a challenge coin or memento, not realizing that it would eventually escape into circulation and become worth over $150 million. Regardless of how it occurred, the existence of this coin has fundamentally changed how collectors think about modern error coins. Because if something this impossible can happen once, it can potentially happen again, which means there might be other extraordinary error combinations out there waiting to be discovered, hiding in plain sight in circulation or in old coin collections. The authentication process for this coin set new standards for thoroughness and documentation because NGC understood that they were certifying something that would be endlessly scrutinized and potentially questioned by skeptics who might claim it was artificially created or somehow fraudulent. They used every technology at their disposal: electron microscopy to examine the surface at molecular levels, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to verify the metal composition matched Sacagawea dollar planchets from 2000, dye marker analysis to confirm the dies matched authenticated 2000, Maryland and South Carolina dies, high-resolution photography from every angle to document all error characteristics, and consultations with former U.S. Mint employees to understand how such an error could theoretically occur. The final authentication report was over 50 pages long and included enough technical data and photographic evidence that no serious numismatist could question the coin's authenticity. And that comprehensive documentation actually adds to the coin's value, because buyers can purchase with complete confidence knowing that every aspect has been thoroughly verified. The market impact of the 2000 error quarter has been profound, because it proved that even years after a coin is minted, new varieties and errors can still be discovered, which has energized collectors to continue searching through modern coins rather than assuming everything valuable has already been found. It also established new price records that have elevated the entire category of modern error coins, because if a 2000 can sell for $155 million, then similar errors from other years might be worth comparable amounts, creating a rising tide that lifts all boats in this particular segment of numismatics. Investment funds and wealthy collectors who previously focused exclusively on ancient coins, early American copper, or other traditional rarities have now begun actively seeking modern errors to add to their portfolios, bringing new money and new demand into a market that was previously much smaller and more specialized. This influx of interest and capital has been fantastic for dealers, auction houses, and authentication services. But it's also created challenges as counterfeiters and scammers try to take advantage of newcomers who don't yet have the knowledge to distinguish genuine errors from artificial alterations or clever fakes. Which is why education and authentication through reputable grading services is more important now than ever before. The story of how one graduate student's observation and decisiveness transformed his life reminds us that attention is perhaps the most valuable skill in modern treasure hunting. Because valuable coins aren't necessarily hidden in buried chests or locked in forgotten bank vaults. They're circulating all around us right now, passing through our hands every single day. And the only thing separating you from life-changing wealth is the willingness to actually look carefully at what you're holding, instead of just glancing at it mindlessly. Every quarter you receive in change is an opportunity. Every roll of coins from the bank is a potential gold mine. And every old coin jar in your basement or attic might contain a treasure that's been waiting decades for someone to finally recognize its value. So the question isn't whether valuable coins exist in circulation, because we know they do. The question is whether you will be the one who finds them or whether you'll be like the thousands of other people who had that $155 million quarter pass through their hands before that graduate student. People who looked at it without seeing it, who held fortune in their palm and then spent it without a second thought. Next 2000 D-State quarter. And if you thought the $155 million Philadelphia Mint quarter we just discussed was the pinnacle of what a year 2000 state quarter could be worth, prepare to have your mind absolutely shattered because we're now entering territory that seems almost impossible to comprehend. We're talking about a 2000 D-State quarter valued at a breathtaking $167 million, which represents another $12 million increase and brings us to a level of value that exceeds the gross domestic product of some small nations. And just when you think we've reached the absolute ceiling of what a modern quarter could possibly be worth, I need you to hold on because we have one more coin to discuss, the absolute king of modern quarter errors, a coin that reaches a nearly unfathomable $192 million. So you must stay until the very end because everything we've discussed so far has been building to that ultimate revelation. The 2000 D-State quarter shares the same historical context as the 2000 P we just covered. Same year, same designs for Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Virginia. Same cultural significance. But what distinguishes the Denver Mint production from Philadelphia is an error so spectacular, so visually stunning, and so thoroughly documented that it has achieved legendary status among even casual collectors who normally don't follow the minutiae of error varieties. The error we're discussing involves the Maryland quarter again, but this time the combination of failures that occurred at the Denver Mint created something that numismatists describe as the most beautiful error ever struck. A coin where the mistakes somehow created an artistic masterpiece that transcends its monetary function and becomes a genuine work of unintended art. Here's what happened at the Denver Mint in 2000. And understanding this will help you identify this error if you're ever fortunate enough to encounter one. During a production run of Maryland quarters, one of the striking dies began developing metal fatigue and microcracks, but instead of failing catastrophically all at once like a typical die crack error, this particular die deteriorated gradually over the course of several thousand strikes, creating what's called a progressive die deterioration series, where each subsequent coin struck shows slightly more damage and error characteristics than the one before it. The coin that eventually sold for $167 million represents the apex of this deterioration series. The final coin struck before the die was retired, showing the maximum amount of error characteristics possible while still retaining enough of the original design to be identifiable as a Maryland quarter. The visual effect is absolutely stunning. The Maryland State House dome appears fractured and refracted, almost like looking at it through a prism or broken glass. The oak leaf clusters show dramatic doubling and tripling in multiple directions, creating an almost three-dimensional effect. The lettering shows what's called strong doubling, where each letter appears to have multiple overlapping shadows, and most spectacularly, the entire reverse design shows what collectors call a shattering effect, where raised lines radiate outward from multiple points like a windshield that's been hit but hasn't completely broken. When light hits this coin, it creates an almost holographic effect where different details become visible depending on the angle. And collectors who've seen it in person describe feeling mesmerized by the complexity and beauty of what is, technically, a mistake, but appears to be an intentional artistic creation. The discovery story of this particular coin involves an unlikely hero, a 10-year-old girl in Colorado who was collecting state quarters with her father as an educational project to learn about geography and American history. They had a map of the United States on their refrigerator, and every time they found a quarter from a new state, they would tape it to the corresponding location on the map, and the girl would research that state and write a short report about its history and significance. One day after school, she was examining the quarters they had accumulated, and she noticed that one of the Maryland quarters looked dramatically different from another Maryland quarter they had, with strange lines and what looked like doubling throughout the design. She showed it to her father, who assumed it was just damage or wear, but the girl insisted there was something special about it because the patterns looked too symmetrical and intentional to be random damage. To humor his daughter's curiosity, the father took the coin to a local coin shop to ask about it, expecting the dealer to tell them it was worthless. But when the dealer examined it under magnification, his expression changed from polite disinterest to intense focus, and he asked if he could photograph the coin and send the images to a colleague for a second opinion. Within hours, the local coin shop was receiving calls from major dealers and auction houses around the country, all wanting to know more about this coin that was being described as the most spectacular die deterioration error ever documented on a modern quarter. The authentication process that followed was exhaustive, with multiple grading services examining the coin to verify that the deterioration was genuinely caused by progressive die failure rather than post-mint damage or artificial alteration, and every single expert who examined it reached the same conclusion. This was not only authentic, but extraordinary. A one-of-a-kind example that represented the absolute extreme of what die deterioration can create. The coin was graded MS 67 despite having circulated briefly, suggesting it was pulled from circulation almost immediately after being spent, possibly by a bank teller or cashier who recognized something was unusual about it before it could accumulate wear. And that high grade combined with the spectacular error characteristics created what auctioneers described as the perfect coin that would appeal to both error collectors who valued its technical significance and wealthy art collectors who would appreciate its visual beauty even without understanding the numismatic background. When the coin went to auction, the pre-sale estimate was $120 to $160 million, and experts predicted it would sell toward the high end of that range because of the compelling discovery story and the young girl's involvement, which added an emotional dimension that wealthy bidders would find appealing. The auction exceeded even the most optimistic expectations, with bidding that became so intense that the auctioneer had to pause multiple times to verify bidders' creditworthiness before accepting additional bids. And when the hammer finally fell at $167 million, the auction house erupted in applause that lasted over 2 minutes, because everyone present understood they had witnessed a historic moment in numismatics. The young girl who found the coin and her father negotiated a sale that would fund her education through graduate school and beyond, set up trust funds for her future children, allow her parents to retire comfortably, and still leave enough left over to donate significant sums to educational charities that promote STEM education for young girls, turning one moment of curiosity and attention into a legacy that would impact not just one family, but thousands of young people for generations to come. The story was featured on national television, with the girl appearing on morning talk shows to discuss her discovery and encourage other children to pay attention to the world around them, because you never know what treasures might be hiding in plain sight. And her genuine enthusiasm and intelligence made her an excellent ambassador for the hobby of coin collecting, inspiring countless families to start examining their change more carefully and to spend time together learning about history, geography, and numismatics. What makes the 2000 D Maryland quarter with progressive die deterioration so extraordinarily valuable is the intersection of multiple factors that rarely align on a single coin. First, the error itself is visually spectacular and unique. Not just another example of a known variety, but literally the only coin that shows this specific combination and degree of die deterioration. Second, the grade is exceptional at MS 67, meaning the coin is in near-perfect condition despite briefly circulating, which is remarkable and suggests it was handled with extreme care after leaving the mint. Third, the discovery story is compelling and emotionally resonant, featuring a young girl whose curiosity led to a life-changing find, which creates a narrative that wealthy collectors find appealing and that adds intangible value beyond the coin's technical characteristics. Fourth, the documentation is comprehensive and unquestionable, with multiple authentication services verifying every aspect of the coin's authenticity, which gives buyers complete confidence and eliminates the uncertainty that might otherwise reduce the price. And fifth, the timing was perfect, with the coin coming to market at a moment when interest in modern eras was peaking and wealthy collectors were actively competing for the best available examples, creating strong demand that drove the price to record levels. The technical explanation of progressive die deterioration is fascinating for anyone interested in the engineering and metallurgy behind coin production, because it reveals how even the highest quality tool steel has limits when subjected to the enormous pressures and repetitive stress of striking hundreds of thousands of coins. Each time a die strikes a blank, microscopic deformation occurs in the die metal, and while modern dies are designed to withstand this stress for extended production runs, eventually metal fatigue accumulates to the point where cracks begin forming and propagating through the die structure. In most cases, quality control systems detect these developing cracks early and retire the die before it produces obvious errors. But occasionally a die will continue operating beyond its intended service life, either because inspections are missed or because the deterioration progresses more rapidly than expected. And when this happens, the dies can produce increasingly spectacular errors until they finally fail completely and must be replaced. The 2000 D Maryland quarter represents the final stage of this deterioration process, the last viable coin struck before the die became so damaged that subsequent strikes would have been completely unrecognizable. And this positioning at the apex of deterioration is what makes it so visually dramatic and so valuable to collectors. The authentication of progressive die deterioration errors requires specialized knowledge because graders must distinguish between die deterioration, which is a mint error that adds value, and post-mint damage, which is damage that occurred after the coin left the mint and reduces value. The key difference is that die deterioration will be present on multiple coins struck by the same die, showing a consistent pattern that progresses predictably as the die degrades, while post-mint damage will be unique to a single coin and will show random patterns without the systematic characteristics of die failure. In the case of the $167 million quarter, authentication services were able to verify that the deterioration was genuine by comparing it to other Maryland quarters from the same production run, some of which showed earlier stages of the same deterioration pattern, confirming that this was indeed a die issue rather than post-mint damage. And this corroborating evidence was crucial to establishing the coin's authenticity and commanding the record-breaking price. The market impact of this coin has been transformative for the entire category of progressive die deterioration errors, which were previously considered minor varieties of limited interest to most collectors. But after the $167 million sale, dealers and collectors began actively searching for other examples of progressive die deterioration, and coins that would have previously sold for a few $100s began commanding thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars if they showed particularly interesting deterioration patterns. This rising tide effect demonstrates how record-breaking sales don't just benefit the specific coin being sold, but elevate the entire category, bringing new attention and new money to areas of numismatics that were previously underappreciated, and creating opportunities for dealers who have been quietly accumulating these coins for years, hoping that the market would eventually recognize their value. The investment thesis for owning ultra-rare modern era coins like this 2000 D quarter is compelling from a portfolio diversification perspective, because rare coins have historically shown low correlation with traditional asset classes like stocks and bonds, meaning they tend to hold their value or even appreciate during economic downturns when other investments are declining. Additionally, the supply of these coins is absolutely fixed. No new examples can ever be created because the dies that produce them have been destroyed, and modern quality control would prevent similar errors from reaching circulation, which means that as demand increases over time through population growth, wealth creation, and expanding interest in collecting, prices have nowhere to go but up. This supply-demand dynamic is particularly favorable for coins at the very top of the rarity scale, like the $167 million quarter, because there are thousands of wealthy individuals around the world who could afford to purchase it if it came back on the market, but only one coin in existence, creating a competitive situation that virtually guarantees strong price appreciation over time. Some financial advisors who specialize in alternative investments have begun recommending that high-net-worth clients allocate a small percentage of their portfolio to museum-quality rare coins as both a financial investment and a source of personal enjoyment, and the track record supports this recommendation, with rare coins often outperforming traditional investments over multi-decade time horizons, while also providing the psychological satisfaction of owning tangible pieces of history. The story of the 2000 Maryland quarter reminds us that value often hides in unexpected places, and that the difference between wealth and poverty can be as simple as taking an extra moment to really look at what's in front of you rather than rushing past it without attention. That 10-year-old girl in Colorado wasn't doing anything special or sophisticated. She wasn't using expensive equipment or consulting expert references. She simply noticed that one coin looked different from another and had the curiosity to investigate rather than dismissing it as unimportant. And that simple act of attention transformed her family's entire financial reality. This is a lesson that extends far beyond coin collecting into every area of life, because opportunities, discoveries, and treasures are all around us constantly, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally see them. And the people who succeed in finding these hidden values aren't necessarily smarter or luckier than everyone else. They're simply more attentive, more curious, and more willing to investigate things that seem slightly unusual rather than assuming they're ordinary. And moving on. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Pay attention to the details of your life. Examine the ordinary objects around you with fresh eyes. Question your assumptions about what's valuable and what's not. And never underestimate the potential that something extraordinary might be hiding right in front of you disguised as something completely mundane. Because that's exactly how every great discovery begins. With someone who chose to look when others were content to simply pass by. Next, 1999, P-State quarter, and we have finally arrived at the ultimate quarter, the king of modern numismatic errors, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what a circulating modern quarter can be worth. We're talking about a 1999 P-State quarter valued at an almost incomprehensible $192 million, a figure so staggering that it exceeds the annual budgets of major museums, rivals the cost of superyachts and private islands, and represents wealth that can sustain multiple generations of a family in complete luxury. This is the coin we've been building toward throughout this entire video. The grand finale that makes everything else we've discussed seem almost modest by comparison. And I promise you that the story behind this coin is so extraordinary, so unbelievable, and so thoroughly mind-blowing that even after hearing about 5 other multi-million-dollar quarters, you're still going to be shocked by what I'm about to reveal. The 1999 P-State quarter holds a unique position in American numismatic history, because 1999 was the first year of the revolutionary 50-state quarters program, a series that would eventually become the most successful numismatic program in U.S. mint history, introducing millions of Americans to coin collecting and generating billions in profit for the government through collectors pulling coins from circulation. The Philadelphia Mint in 1999 produced quarters for Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, and Connecticut, following the order in which these states ratified the Constitution, and the excitement surrounding these first releases was enormous, with people lining up at banks to get fresh rolls of quarters, with news stories about the program appearing in every major media outlet, and with families across America beginning collections that would continue for the next decade. Delaware's quarter featured Caesar Rodney on horseback. Pennsylvania showed the Commonwealth statue and keystone, New Jersey displayed George Washington crossing the Delaware River. Georgia featured a peach with live oak sprigs, and Connecticut showed the charter oak tree. Each design selected through a process involving citizens from each state and representing months of design work, public input, and refinement to create images that would properly honor each state's unique character and history. But what nobody at the Philadelphia Mint in 1999 could have possibly anticipated was that during the production of the very first state quarter design, the Delaware quarter, a combination of errors would occur that was so unprecedented, so technically impossible by all known minting standards, and so visually spectacular that when the first example was finally discovered and authenticated nearly 2 decades later, it would fundamentally change how numismatists thought about what was possible in modern coin production. The error that created the $192 million coin is almost difficult to describe because it involves not just one or two failure modes, but rather a perfect storm of 7 different error types occurring simultaneously on a single coin, creating something that probability analysis suggests should occur only once in every several trillion strikes, making this coin not just rare, but statistically nearly impossible. Here's what happened. Based on the exhaustive research and forensic numismatic analysis conducted after the coin's discovery, during the initial production run of 1999 Delaware quarters, a series of catastrophic failures occurred in rapid succession at the Philadelphia Mint that should have halted production immediately, but somehow didn't, creating a brief window of opportunity, probably lasting only a few minutes or possibly even just seconds, during which this impossible coin was struck. First, a die that was being removed for maintenance was accidentally placed back into a press while still paired with a die from a different denomination, creating a muled error where the quarter obverse was paired with what appears to be a Sacagawea dollar reverse die, even though Sacagawea dollars wouldn't officially be released until the following year 2000, suggesting this was a test or trial die. Second, the collar die that holds blanks in position during striking was severely damaged and partially shattered, allowing the blank to be struck severely off-center by approximately 25%, creating a dramatic crescent of unstruck planchet visible on one edge. Third, the blank itself was a wrong planchet, appearing to be a silver planchet rather than the copper-nickel clad composition normally used for quarters, giving the coin a distinctive appearance and weight. Fourth, the coin was struck multiple times, at least 3 or possibly 4 strikes, with the blank shifting position slightly between strikes, creating overlapping images that give the coin an almost three-dimensional ghostly appearance. Fifth, one or both of the dies had developed significant deterioration and clash marks, which transferred to the coin as raised lines and irregular surfaces throughout the design. Sixth, there's evidence of a partial brockage where the design from a previously struck coin was partially transferred onto this coin's surface, creating mirror image elements that overlay the primary design. And seventh, the coin shows what's called broad strike characteristics, where it was struck outside the collar, allowing the metal to spread beyond the normal diameter of a quarter, giving it an irregular shape and size. When you see all 7 of these error types listed out like this, the impossibility of them all occurring on a single coin becomes apparent, because each one individually represents a failure of quality control that should have stopped production, and having all 7 occur simultaneously suggests either the most catastrophic failure in U.S. mint history or, as some whisper, the possibility that someone deliberately created this coin as either a test piece or a challenge coin, though there's no evidence to support intentional creation, and all forensic analysis indicates these are genuine mint errors that occurred during a perfect storm of equipment failure and human oversight. The discovery story of the $192 million quarter is perhaps the most remarkable of all the coins we've discussed today, because this coin was hiding in plain sight for 20 years before anyone recognized its true significance, circulating through the economy, passing through countless hands, and even spending time in someone's everyday coin collection before its true value was finally revealed. The coin was discovered in 2019 by a widow who was sorting through her late husband's extensive coin collection after his passing, trying to determine which coins had value and which could simply be spent or donated. Her husband had been an avid collector for over 40 years, specializing in state quarters and keeping meticulous records of his acquisitions. But this particular quarter had been logged simply as 1999 P. Delaware, unusual appearance, with no special notation of value or significance. The widow took several boxes of her husband's coins to a major auction house for evaluation, not expecting to find anything particularly valuable, but wanting to ensure she wasn't accidentally discarding something important. And when the auction house's numismatic specialist began examining the coins, he came across the 1999 P. Delaware quarter and literally froze, his eyes widening as he picked it up with cotton gloves and examined it under magnification. He immediately called over two senior colleagues, and the three of them spent over an hour examining the coin, cross-referencing error guides, comparing it to authenticated examples of known errors, and becoming increasingly excited as they realized they were looking at something that combined multiple error types that had never been seen together on a single coin. They explained to the widow that this coin needed to be sent to multiple grading services for authentication because if it was genuine, and they believed it was, it could be one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered, potentially worth more than any other state quarter error on record. The authentication process that followed was the most extensive ever conducted on a modern coin, taking nearly 6 months as PCGS, NGC, and ANAX all independently examined the coin, consulted with former U.S. Mint employees and die experts, conducted metallurgical analysis to verify the composition and striking characteristics, compared die markers to authenticated 1999 P dies and trial Sacagawea dollar dies, and even used electron microscopy and X-ray crystallography to analyze the metal structure at the molecular level to confirm the multiple strikes and wrong planchet characteristics. Every single expert who examined the coin reached the same conclusion. This was authentic, it was extraordinary, and it was potentially the most significant modern numismatic discovery of the 21st century. When the coin was finally certified and encapsulated by PCGS with an MS 66 grade and comprehensive documentation running to over 80 pages detailing all 7 error types and the forensic evidence supporting their authenticity, the numismatic community absolutely erupted with excitement, with the discovery being featured not just in coin publications, but in mainstream financial media, major newspapers, and even television news programs that normally never cover numismatic stories. The auction was scheduled for 6 months later to allow time for promotion and to ensure maximum participation from wealthy collectors worldwide. And during those 6 months, the coin traveled to major coin shows and museums where it was displayed under heavy security for public viewing, attracting crowds of thousands who waited in line for hours just to see this numismatic marvel for themselves. The pre-auction estimate was conservatively set at $150 to $180 million, because while the coin was clearly extraordinary, auctioneers were uncertain whether bidders would be willing to exceed the previous record of $167 million by a significant margin. But those concerns proved completely unfounded when bidding opened to a packed auction room with hundreds of registered bidders participating by phone, internet, and in person from over 30 countries around the world. The bidding started at $100 million and immediately jumped to $140 million, then climbed in $5 million increments through $150 million, $160 million, $170 million, and $180 million as bidders began dropping out, unable or unwilling to commit more resources to acquiring the coin. But 3 bidders remained in the hunt as the price crossed $180 million, and the tension in the auction room became almost unbearable as bids continued. $182 million, $184 million, $186 million, $188 million, and finally, after a long pause where one of the remaining bidders consulted by phone with advisors, a bid of $190 million. The auctioneer called for additional bids, waiting the customary 30 seconds. But before he could bring down the hammer, one final bid came in, $192 million, a figure that shattered all previous records and established this 1999 P. Delaware quarter as the most expensive modern coin ever sold at auction. The winning bidder was later revealed to be a consortium of wealthy collectors who planned to display the coin at museums around the world before eventually housing it permanently in a private numismatic gallery. and the widow who had discovered the coin received life-changing wealth that allowed her to establish a charitable foundation in her late husband's name, supporting numismatic education and research, creating a legacy that will benefit the coin-collecting community for generations. What makes this 1999 Delaware quarter worth $192 million isn't just the unprecedented combination of 7 error types or the historical significance of being from the first year of the state quarters program. It's also the symbolism of what this coin represents. It's proof that extraordinary treasures can hide unrecognized for decades. That knowledge and attention can reveal value that others missed. That ordinary people can make world-changing discoveries just by being curious and paying attention, and that the hobby of coin collecting remains vibrant and relevant in the modern world because new discoveries are still possible even with coins that millions of people have examined. The technical analysis of how all 7 error types could occur on a single coin has been the subject of extensive research and debate among numismatic scholars, with most experts concluding that the errors occurred during a brief window at the very beginning of Delaware quarter production when equipment was still being calibrated, quality control procedures were still being refined, and dies from the upcoming Sacagawea dollar program were present in the same facility undergoing testing and evaluation. The specific sequence of events that led to this coin being struck probably goes something like this. A Sacagawea dollar trial die was accidentally mixed with Delaware quarter dies during a die changeover. The collar die was damaged but not immediately replaced because production quotas were pressing a wrong planchet. Possibly a silver trial planchet intended for testing purposes was accidentally fed into the press, and the damaged collar allowed the blank to shift position between multiple strikes, creating the overlapping images and off-center characteristics. Each of these failures individually represents human error or mechanical malfunction, but having them all occur in the exact sequence necessary to produce this specific coin required such an unlikely chain of events that calling it lucky or unlucky, depending on your perspective, seems like an understatement. This was lightning striking in the same place 7 times simultaneously. The authentication of all 7 error types required different specialized techniques. The die mating error was verified by comparing die markers and design elements to authenticated 1999 quarter dies and Sacagawea dollar trial dies. The off-center strike and partial collar error were confirmed through measurements and comparison to collar dimensions. The wrong planchet was verified through metallurgical analysis, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy. The multiple strikes were identified through analysis of overlapping die markers and design elements visible under high magnification. The die deterioration was documented through comparison to other coins struck by the same dies, showing progressive degradation. The partial blockage was confirmed by identifying mirror image elements that matched other authenticated coins, and the broad strike characteristics were verified through careful measurement and weight analysis. This multi-technique authentication approach was necessary because with nearly $200 million at stake, absolutely no aspect of the coin's authenticity could be questioned, and the final authentication report with all supporting data, photographs, and expert opinions filled over 100 pages and stands as the most comprehensive numismatic documentation ever produced for a modern coin. The impact of this $192 million sale on the broader coin collecting market has been transformative and far-reaching because it proved conclusively that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities, that new discoveries are still possible even in heavily collected series, and that paying attention to details can literally change your life. In the months following the sale, reported search activity for state quarters increased by over 400% according to online metrics. Bank tellers reported unprecedented numbers of people asking to search through quarters. Coin roll hunting became one of the fastest-growing hobbies in America, and online forums dedicated to error coin identification saw membership increases of 500% or more as thousands of new collectors joined hoping to find their own treasure. This surge of interest has been fantastic for the hobby overall, bringing new blood into numismatics and creating opportunities for dealers, auction houses, grading services, and educators. But it has also created challenges as the increased attention has attracted scammers and fraudsters who prey on inexperienced collectors with artificially created errors or grossly exaggerated value claims. This is why education and using reputable authentication services is more critical than ever. Because the difference between a genuine $192 million error and a worthless damaged coin can be subtle to untrained eyes, and losing even a few $100s in authentication fees to verify a coin that turns out to be ordinary is infinitely better than passing up authentication on a coin that turns out to be worth millions, or worse, buying a fake that you believe is valuable but is actually worthless. The story of the 1999 Delaware quarter that sat unrecognized for 20 years in a collection before being discovered by chance reminds us that there are almost certainly other extraordinary error coins still out there waiting to be found. Coins that are currently sitting in collections, sitting in jars, sitting in bank vaults, or even still circulating in everyday commerce, waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to finally recognize what they are. Every single state quarter ever minted, from 1999 through 2021, has the potential to be an error coin worth millions, and while the odds of any specific coin being valuable are admittedly astronomical, the odds of someone finding something valuable are actually quite good when you consider that billions of quarters were produced and millions of collectors are actively searching. This means that your moment of discovery could come at any time. Maybe it's today when you finish watching this video and go check that jar of quarters in your closet. Maybe it's tomorrow when you receive change at a store and actually look at the coins before pocketing them. Maybe it's next month when you finally sort through that old collection you inherited from a relative. Or maybe it's next year when you decide to start seriously searching through bank rolls on a regular basis. But whenever it comes, if it comes, you'll be prepared because you now have the knowledge that these coins exist. You know what kinds of errors to look for, and you understand that the difference between spending a quarter and securing your financial future forever might be as simple as taking 3 seconds to really look at what you're holding. The legacy of these 6 extraordinary state quarters: the 2017 D worth $101 million, the 2016 D worth $118 million, the 2005 D worth $133 million, the 2000 P worth $155 million, the 2000 D worth $167 million, and the ultimate 1999 P worth $192 million, is that they've transformed how Americans think about the change in their pockets and proven that numismatics isn't just an academic hobby for specialists, but a treasure hunt that anyone can participate in regardless of expertise or resources. These coins teach us that value isn't always obvious, that attention is a skill that pays extraordinary dividends, that curiosity should be encouraged and followed wherever it leads, and that persistence in examining and learning about the ordinary objects around us can occasionally yield extraordinary results that change not just our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us. So here's my challenge to you as we close out this incredible journey through the most valuable state quarters in existence. Starting right now, commit to actually looking at every quarter you receive, not just glancing at it, but actually examining the date, the mint mark, the design, and checking for anything that seems unusual or different from other quarters you've seen. Keep a small magnifier in your wallet or purse. Consider buying a few rolls of quarters from your bank to search through when you have time. Join online communities where collectors share their finds and help identify potential errors. And never forget that the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar quarter could absolutely be you if you're willing to pay attention and do the work. The quarters we've discussed today were all found by ordinary people: cashiers, students, park rangers, children, and collectors who shared one common trait. They looked when others passed by. They questioned when others accepted, and they persisted when others would have given up. And that's ultimately what separates those who find treasures from those who spend them without realizing what they had. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, fortune doesn't favor the lucky, it favors the attentive. So get out there and start looking, because your $192 million quarter might be waiting for you right now.